Glory to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to another episode of City of Desert. And once again, we are picking up with our reading from the first volume of the Philokalia. And we are reading currently the writings and the sayings of Evagrius of Pontus, in particular his text on discrimination in regards to passions and the thoughts that come to our mind. So our ability to discern, to discriminate the kinds of thoughts that are coming into our mind, the influence that they have upon us, the nature of the demonic provocation behind them, and how then we remedy them. And so this is an extremely valuable piece of writing for the spiritual life, and in particular, laying the foundation in our day-to-day struggle with the thoughts and passions that have taken root deeply within our hearts, how to overcome them. And so today we are picking up on page 40 of the first volume of the Philokalia, and we are considering saying number 4 of this section. Evagrius writes, "We shall now inquire how, in the fantasies that occur during sleep, the demons imprint shapes and forms on our intellect. Normally, the intellect receives these shapes and forms either through the eyes when it is seeing, or through the ears when it is hearing, or through some other sense, or else through the memory, which stirs up and imprints on the intellect things which it has experienced through the body. Now it seems to me that in our sleep, when the activity of our bodily senses is suspended, it is by arousing the memory that the demons make this imprint. But in that case, how do the demons arouse the memory? Is it through the passions? Clearly, this is so. For those in a state of purity and dispassion no longer experience demonic fantasies in sleep. There is also an activity of the memory that is not demonic. It is caused by ourselves and by the angelic powers, and through it we may meet the saints and delight in their company. We should notice, in addition, that during sleep, the memory stirs up, without the body's participation, those very images which the soul has received in association with the body. This is clear from the fact that we often experience such images during sleep, when the body is at rest. Just as it is possible to think of gold with greed and without greed. Just as it is possible to think of water both while thirsty and while not thirsty, to think of gold with greed and without greed. The same applies to other things. Thus, if we can discriminate in this way between one kind of fantasy and another, we can then recognize the artfulness of the demons. We should be aware, too, that the demons also use external things to produce fantasies, such as the sound of waves heard at the sea. In this writing, we see once again just how astute, psychologically astute and spiritually astute the Desert Fathers were. They came to understand the workings not only of the demons, but of the human mind and heart very clearly. The ways that demonic provocation affect the mind, the heart, the memory, and how things even arise now in this section during our sleep. And so, as a preface to this, we want to understand that what arises as a dream during our sleep is not sinful. We are not in control of our will. We do not will that these things come to our mind and to our imagination, but they do reflect something of the state of our heart and the state of our soul, that when we are in the grip of the passions, when sin has become habitual for us and the memory and the imagination are full of the images that have been imprinted upon it through the senses, then these things come up in and through our memory, as Evagrius tells us, then to stir the passions, even during our dreaming state. And so while we are not morally responsible at that moment for the dream. We are certainly morally responsible for the state of our soul and the neglect perhaps that has existed there in our waking hours, the things that we've exposed ourselves to through the senses, or for our lack of prayer, or lack of reading of the scriptures and participation in the sacramental life. All these things go into the formation of the mind and the heart, as well as the healing of the mind and the heart and the memory. And this is the extraordinary thing about the grace of God. We see that we are in a constant state of receptivity, as Evagrius has taught us, through our senses. And so what we see, what we hear, what we touch throughout the course of the day, this has an impact upon us. And so we are to guard the heart. We are to guard our senses to make sure that we are not allowing these things to enter into our minds, that we are avoiding them, or that we are responding to them with prayer. So to redirect the mind and the heart toward God. What Evagrius is telling us here, again, is that when we have not been watchful in this regard, the demons will play on the fact that we have allowed these thoughts to become imprinted upon our memory, and that they have taken hold of our will. They have become habitual sins, and so passions. And so a thought, an idea can emerge that then gives rise to them. And this, Evagrius tells us, can, because by our own self, that things arise out of memory, out of the depths of our unconscious, as they will, sometimes because of the things that we've experienced throughout the day. But the demon's also aware of how we've acted through the day, or how we've failed to engage in the spiritual life, where we are going to be vulnerable, the kinds of conversations perhaps that we've had with people. And so even while we are asleep, or as we're drifting off into sleep, to place before our mind things that will trigger memories from the unconscious. And so what arises in our dreams is often a reflection of our spiritual state, that our dreams can have a particular lustful or greedy content to them that is rooted in, again, the things that we've been focused on throughout the course of a given day. This is important for us to understand, because oftentimes we take no account of the things that we are hearing throughout the day, or what we would watch on television or hear on the radio, or the conversations that we would overhear people having, and think that in some ways, because we are not moved in the moment by those things, that they are not having an impact upon us. Whereas Evagrius and the Fathers tell us, indeed they do. They become imprinted upon the memory. And even when they are out of consciousness, when they are in the depths of the unconscious, they can be stirred again, even as things are stirred in our waking hours. Those who have undergone trauma, for example, in their life, when they encounter something that gives rise or touches upon a memory that is sensitive, it can trigger the feelings that are associated with it. And so they can feel the experience of the trauma arising again in their hearts, even though they are not physically undergoing that trauma at the moment. And so similarly here, that in our memory lies the things that we've engaged in over the course of time. And it is only by opening ourselves to the grace of God in a radical fashion that we are able then to heal the memory, heal the imagination. For many, this seems to be an impossibility. And indeed, early on in the spiritual life, perhaps it is, because for decades of our life, perhaps we've immersed ourselves in particular kinds of sin. And so the healing can take a great deal of time, as well as our engagement in the ascetic life, our embrace of the grace of God, and especially constancy of prayer, of silence, of stillness. And yet this is what God does for us. This is the purification of the heart that takes place, not on simply on the surface level, but on the deepest level of our being, even that we are no longer aware of. God is always at work. It's been said that what we see of the saints is the least part of them. In other words, what we see of the saints is only a surface manifestation of the action of God's grace in their life. But God has worked in deeper ways than we can imagine to bring healing to the lives of the saints and to their hearts, to make them radically open to the action of his grace in their day-to-day life. This is what God promises us, a share now, even in the divine life, a participation by grace in the life of the Holy Trinity. This is the ultimate goal of the spiritual life, deification, that we put on the mind of Christ, that we become one with Christ in a radical way. And so with and in and through him, we become one in the life of the triune God. What glory we are called to as lowly and poor human beings. And so let us today give thanks to God for his great mercy, his great love. Let's pray for a greater desire, a holy resolve in the spiritual life to open our minds and our hearts to the action of his grace. Thank you, and God bless you, and have a wonderful day.